I realize that I said a few words wrong in that. Sometimes I mess up my words, but yeah, there's a difference between council tax, which is just like the local charge. It's about, well, minimum is 1,100. It used to be 1,000, now it's 1,100 because it goes up each year. In fact, I think it used to be like 80 when I first came here, but now it's 1,100. But yeah, there's council charge, and then there's service charges, which is something that only some buildings have. Like if you own a house, if you own a freehold, then you don't have service charge. If you have, there's some companies that build big houses and they charge high services because that's a kind of way of making money, I guess. So you have that, and then you have council. So yeah, there's a local charge, the local council charge, and the and then the service charge on the house, and then you have mortgage and stuff. And yeah, if you do all the calculations of my sisters, I think it actually mounts up to being quite a lot of money, and I don't think my sister realizes that it's not going to be that easy to save. So she might want to sell me another 10% in whenever she realizes that it's quite high and it's going to take her quite a long time to pay it off. But yeah, the 18,000 I can give her could help her pay it off quicker, which means that she'll have less interest. Okay, she'll be making less money on the property, but yeah, I guess there is something with when you're investing in houses, which that the house market might drop. You know, I have a strong feeling that there is going to be a massive house price drop. So that's a prophecy that I believe, because when people start going in the rapture, you know, that there's going to be a lot of empty houses, and these are going to be bought up, but because they're bought up, house prices all over the world will drop. But I reckon that there's going to be a high migration. You know, there's a lot of people that are living in a country that they don't want to live, and they're going to move. And I think there's also a lot of reason why there's a lot of people that don't like certain countries because of ways that they've been run. And I think whatever I'm about to do is about to, you know, there's a hive mind that comes with believing in a real God. You know, right now people don't actually think God is real. Like, people say, yeah, I believe in God, but really they're just saying it to kind of comfort themselves and make themselves feel better. But I think when people realize that God is real, it is me, you know, a hive mind has actually already been formed inside lots of people. And I think once this hive mind has been acknowledged, it makes the people who know about me come together, unite, and be more similar, because they suddenly start seeing things from a different perspective. You know, if someone accidentally kills someone, it's terrible that they've died, but if it turns out that that person has actually been suicidal their whole life, the person that died, then maybe the only reason why this accident happened was because it was kind of karma and them wanting it to happen, you know. Or maybe that person was a terrible person and they deserved to die. Maybe my higher self actually set up this murder, in which case, do you really want to punish the person that accidentally killed that person? You know, if it's a car crash or whatever. And you know, if someone has had a little bit over the limit and then they have an accident and someone dies, but if that person in the back seat wasn't wearing a seatbelt, like, how much responsibility do they take? You know, I think as humans, you have this horrible tendency to just want to try and put as much blame on one person as possible. You know, you seem to have like, these are the good people and these are the bad people, and I think in reality there are a lot of victims who are kind of partly victimizing themselves by putting themselves at more risks or taking more chances. You know, if something bad happens to someone and yet you have chosen to work at a dodgy nightclub in the middle of the night, and if you're deliberately walking around in mini skirts, you know, sometimes even though it's not your fault and you shouldn't be blamed, sometimes a person can actually take responsibility. Or say you're swearing at someone and that person throws a rock at you, you know, suddenly it's not such a this is bad, because some, you know, this is bad, this is good, but rather it could be like, this is very bad, but this is also, you know, she was egging it on, she was encouraging it. And I just think when I come in, people are going to see things from my perspective. You know, if a parent is terrible to their child, you know, it's terrible. But if you know that that person might have actually been terrible to their past life, a child in their past life, then you might realize, okay, it's not for you to judge, and you shouldn't say that just because someone's in that position. You know, like with the girl from uni, you know, I don't want to say that that's 100% the truth. I just had a really bad feeling, like I didn't like her, and I didn't know why. I couldn't understand why I didn't like her, and then I found out this, and I just had this belief that maybe I found out that she was being molested, and I just had this belief that maybe this is the reason why I didn't like her, because she used to do that to someone else in the past. And I don't know if this is the truth, and I'm not saying that this is the truth, and I'm not promoting this as the truth, but I'm saying that this is the belief that I had before I knew that I was God. And I just feel like a lot of things that I believed before have summed up and built me up in a way, and helped me to form my own religion, because I looked on the things that I believed in the past based on the voice in my head, or whatever led me to the bad feelings that I got. I take things on feelings and stuff, and I've always believed in reincarnation because of feeling no connection with my parents and thinking, why the hell was I given them? But it makes sense if I was a cave woman in a past life, because I've been obviously given people that are very non-evolved, like I was non-evolved in my past life, so that kind of makes sense. But I think when people see things from my perspective, a lot of things will change. What was that 17-year-old a victim, or was that 17-year-old always fantasizing about something, and then the teacher said, you know what, let's make this a reality? And right now you see things as teacher bad, teacher shouldn't take advantage of students, when really students can actually be very sexually active and actually can encourage it and can incite it, and 17 is not a child, and there's reincarnation is the truth. So it's very likely that someone at 17 can be very, very mature for their age, and it's also very likely that you can get people like my sister, 30, and acting like a child still. So it's very unique for different people, and once you see things from that perspective, it might actually change your view on things, and change how you handle things. And once you change how you handle things, I think countries all around the world are also going to start changing how they handle things, and handle things in a similar kind of way, because this sort of beehive mind is going to be formed, because part of the beehive mind is, this is the queen, this is what we accept as being the one that's laying the eggs, and therefore we're all going to be similar in a way. This is our where we came from. This queen bee is is our kind of leader figure, and I think once that happens, once all the world, nations will change, the world will change. And I'm not too sure about the Islamic countries though, because I think Islam was designed to be everything that I'm not, and then the exact opposite of me, and it was designed for a reason. Now I just need the leaders of that to know, I just need the leaders of them to know the reason, and act accordingly to how they feel they should act. If they are heartless or crueler in nature, that's how they're meant to be. And I think countries should recognize that. Countries handle things in different ways because their people are different, but it's some people like certain countries because they feel similar to that aspect. I want to live in this country because I like how they do things. I don't like how they do things in England. Marco's now wanting to go back to Portugal because of how social services are treating him, and I think that's completely reasonable. But if in the future social services wasn't going to act in this way, and they were going to act more accordingly, actually give people a chance rather than just say that they can't do it, even though there's no evidence to suggest they can't do it. If they change their way, then Marco might change his views and actually like living in England and want to stay here. I don't know what his plans are, but I think he's far more realistic than my sister when it comes to plans. So I don't know what the future is. He might stay. He might start liking the country. I know he's got an 8-year-old son that he definitely does not want to leave, and the other two are older. But one of them's actually going to move back to Portugal. He's got a house in Portugal, and the government are not helping him because the tenants aren't paying rent, and there's squatters' rights or whatever. And I think that's totally wrong. I mean, if you're investing in a property and you're living off the rental money, and then the people in there stop paying and saying squatters' rights, then you're no longer earning money, so you've lost your job in effect, and therefore, when it comes to council tax, I think it should be done by how much you earn, and if you can prove that you haven't earned more than £5,000, then why should if you only earn £5,000, why should you pay £1,000 or £2,000 in more richer areas? Why should you pay £2,000 of your £5,000 just because you've got 30,000 in your bank. I mean, if you're living off the interest, and the only reason why you've got that £5,000 is because of your interest, and if you start eating into your interest, then you're only going to have less interest. You're going to find yourself getting poorer. Also, with inflation likely going up 10% each time, you are getting poorer, because I guess the government is creating too much money, and the value of money is decreasing each year. So that's really terrible. And it's terrible also to think that inflation might be happening because banks are just inventing money that they don't actually have, but they're claiming that they have just because they can, or whatever. Like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on with the banking system. I heard there's a world banking system. Are they trustworthy? I mean, someone's got to be trustworthy, and there is only so much money that you can need for you to realise that you don't actually need money. But if the wrong people are getting money, then greed will come in, and that's how it is. But yeah, I just wanted to say all that, and